discussed little bit about protein metabolism. So we have started protein metabolism. After we have already finished carbohydrate metabolism, lipid metabolism. So in the class I had started protein metabolism. So briefly again I will tell you what is protein metabolism. Briefly, very briefly, within 2 to 3 minutes, so that I can continue from the previous class. So in the body, around 100 grams of amino acids are always maintained in the body, and these free amino acids, which are known as amino acid pool, is actually contributed by the protein breakdown in the body, or from the dietary proteins, or the proteins, or the dietary proteins, or the amino acids that are synthesized in the body. Like many amino acids or non-essential amino acids, they can be synthesized in the body. So these all amino acids also contribute to the body amino acids pool, and at the same time, equal amount of protein will also be utilized for different biological activities, or for the biosynthesis of different molecules. Like, so the same amount of protein will also be synthesized back, and the amino acids will also be utilized for the synthesis of some non-protein compounds, mainly like purines and pyrimidines. As you know, these purines and pyrimidines, they are part of the nucleotide molecules, which are the building blocks of nucleic acids like DNA and RNA. And these body amino acid pool, or the amino acids, free amino acids that are available, can also be diverted for the biosynthesis of other biomolecules, important biomolecules like carbohydrates or fats. And part of the amino acids can also be utilized for the energy production within the body, like 10 to 15% of the body's daily requirement of energy will be met by body amino acid pool, which is constant, means roughly maintained around 100 grams. So the overview of protein metabolism is, as the proteins are easily digested to amino acids in the digestive tract. So in the GI tract, proteins or the other proteins, they may be digested into amino acids. They'll be taken up by the cells, and they'll be taken up by different proteins generated during protein breakdown in the body. These amino acids. So students, are you listening me? Are you listening? Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So these amino acids, they undergo two important chemical reactions. One is transamination, the other one is deamination. So amino acids undergo transamination. Transamination means the transfer of an amino group of the amino acids to alpha ketoglutarate molecule. Like many of the amino acids, they transfer their amino group to alpha ketoglutarate molecule to produce their respective keto acids. It means during transamination, amino acids are converted to keto acids, during which the transfer of amino group from the amino acids takes place onto alpha ketoglutarate. So these alpha ketoglutarate, after receiving amino group from amino acids, will be converted to glutamate molecule. Glutamate, again, it is an amino acid. So once glutamate is formed, this glutamate is diverted for deamination. So deamination means removal of amino group. Removal of amino groups takes place from glutamate. So ammonia is formed, amino group is removed, and it is formed, and it is it is converted to ammonia, and this ammonia molecule is diverted for urea synthesis. So the end product of protein metabolism, proteins that are converted to amino acids, and amino acids after transamination and deamination produce ammonia, which is converted to urea. So urea is the end product of protein metabolism. Remember this. This is very, very important point. So how transamination and deamination takes place, we have already discussed in the last class, but briefly once again I will tell you. So what are the substrates for transamination? One amino acid and one keto acid. So amino acid, you see there is transfer of amino group from an amino acid to a keto acid like alpha ketoglutarate to produce their respective keto acid and amino acid. Okay, for example, you can see here alanine is an amino acid which upon transamination means it there is transfer of amino group from alanine to alpha ketoglutarate to produce pyruvate and glutamate amino acid. So transfer of amino group from alanine to alpha ketoglutarate leading to the formation of pyruvate, which is a keto acid, and a glutamate amino acid. So the enzyme that is responsible for this transamination reaction is called as alanine transaminase or alanine aminotransferase, or the old name of this enzyme is SGPT, serum glutamate pyruvate transaminase. This is very important. So ALT or SGPT is the enzyme that is responsible for the transamination of alanine and alpha ketoglutarate to pyruvate and glutamate. Another important enzyme or another important transaminase which plays a vital role in the transamination reactions is AST enzyme, that is aspartate transferase or aspartate aminotransferase or serum glutamate oxaloacetate transferase. Okay, so the substrates of AST are aspartate and alpha ketoglutarate. The products of this enzymatic reaction is or transamination reaction are oxaloacetate and glutamate amino acid. So pyridoxal phosphate, which is a vitamin B6 derivative, is required for these transaminases function. So pyridoxal phosphate or PLP is required for this enzymatic action. So ALT and AST, they are very important enzymes in the clinical biochemistry part, because ALT and AST, they are used as the marker enzymes for the diagnosis of liver diseases as well as cardiac diseases. So again, in the next semester, we shall be discussing about these enzymes in about these enzymes in detail. So now I will not discuss much. So mechanism of action of these transamination also I have discussed. You please go through the textbook. This is very simple. Then come to the deamination. So transamination is the transfer of amino group from the amino acids to keto acids to produce their respective keto acids and amino acid. Amino acid is product is glutamate. So glutamate receives the amino group from many amino acids. Okay, so glutamate is synthesized in transamination reactions commonly from many amino acids. That you remember. So now deamination. Deamination is simply it is the removal of amino group from the amino acids as ammonia is called as deamination. So this definition is very simple. Transamination is the transfer of amino group, whereas deamination is removal of amino group as ammonia is called as deamination. So there is liberation of ammonia in the deamination reaction, which is further converted to urea, which is the end product of protein metabolism in the mammals. So transamination, another important point is transamination and deamination, they occur simultaneously. They do not occur separately in the cells within the same time simultaneously. Whenever there is transamination, immediately there will be deamination from the glutamate molecule. Okay, so that this ammonia that is produced during deamination is diverted for urea biosynthesis. So students, are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very good. So now coming to the deamination in detail. So deamination takes place in two modes. One is oxidative deamination. The other mode is non-oxidative deamination. So oxidation is involved in oxidative deamination, whereas in non-oxidative deamination, there is no oxidation takes place in the non-oxidative deamination. So deamination is two types. One is oxidative, the other one is non-oxidative deamination. So commonly in the liver and kidney, oxidative deamination takes place with the help of a specific enzyme called as glutamate dehydrogenase. So this also I had discussed in the last class, but again briefly I am discussing it here. This is very important. Please concentrate. So oxidative deamination is the liberation of free ammonia from the amino group of amino acids which is coupled to the oxidation. Okay, so the substrate is, the substrate is fixed. It is L-glutamate, which is synthesized in transamination reactions. Now this L-glutamate participate in the oxidative deamination. So glutamate dehydrogenase is the enzyme which converts L-glutamate to so alpha ketoglutarate with the concomitant release of amino group as ammonia. So ammonia is liberated in deamination reaction, and importantly, glutamate dehydrogenase will be utilizing either NAD plus or NADP plus as coenzyme. So glutamate dehydrogenase requires a coenzyme, either it can be NAD plus or NADP plus. So after utilizing these, reducing molecules, L-glutamate is converted to alpha ketoglutarate with the release of ammonia, amino group as ammonia. So ammonia, the ammonia molecular formula or chemical formula is NH3, but within the cells NH3 or within the body NH3 exists as ammonium ions. That is why it is shown as NH4 plus. So an ammonia which is NH3 it exists as ammonium ions. So that is why it is shown as NH4 plus. Remember this. So glutamate is serving as the collection centers for different collection centers for amino group from different amino acids in the biological system. So amino group from different amino acids received by the alpha ketoglutarate or other keto acids to produce glutamate amino acids. So that is why glutamate acts as the collection center for amino groups in the biological system. So now this glutamate participates in the oxidative deamination mainly in two different tissues. One is liver and kidney to undergo oxidative deamination and produces ammonia. Remember this. So this is oxidative deamination, right? Oxidative deamination by glutamate dehydrogenase enzyme. So oxidative deamination also takes place with the help of other enzymes. Importantly, these enzymes are called as amino acid oxidases. So GDH or glutamate dehydrogenase is responsible for oxidative deamination in liver and kidney, whereas in other tissues of the body and also in liver, another set of enzymes also responsible for oxidative deamination. They are called as amino acid oxidases. So there are two types of amino acid oxidases. One is called as L-amino acid oxidase. The other one is called as D-amino acid oxidase. So L-amino acid oxidase require FMN or flavin mononucleotide as the coenzyme, whereas D-amino acid oxidase requires flavin adenine dinucleotide as the coenzyme for its function. So as the name suggests, L-amino acid oxidase acts on L-amino acids to convert them into alpha keto acids and ammonia. So it is again oxidative deamination. So there is formation of ammonia or there is removal of amino group from the L-amino acids as ammonia. Is L-amino acid oxidase which converts L-amino acid to alpha keto acid and NH3, which is ammonia. Okay. So L-amino acid oxidase acts on L-amino acids, D-amino acid oxidase acts on D-amino acids. Okay, that is very important. So ammonia is generated, but there is formation of hydrogen peroxide during this particular chemical reaction. How? FMNH2 that is formed, which is a reducing equivalent, it acts on molecular oxygen to convert molecular oxygen into hydrogen peroxide. So hydrogen peroxide, it is very toxic or dangerous to the cells. So that is why hydrogen peroxide is immediately detoxified by the catalase enzyme. Catalase enzyme is present in every cell of the body. So catalase immediately converts hydrogen peroxide into molecular oxygen and water molecules. Okay, this is the very important function of catalase in most of the cells of the body. So because there is continuous generation of different reactive oxygen species and hydrogen peroxide. So since hydrogen peroxide is very toxic to the cells, so it should be immediately detoxified. into molecular oxygen and water by catalase. So L-amino acid oxidase acts on L-amino acids to convert them into keto acid and ammonia. Importantly, there is liberation of ammonia during oxidative deamination by L-amino acid oxidase. Okay. So L-amino acid oxidase function is very restricted because GDH glutamate dehydrogenase performs most of the oxidative deamination reactions within the cells like liver and other tissues of the body. Whereas the deamine acid oxidase is very important, for the discussion, because we know that we the mammals or vertebrates, we do not have any proteins that contain D-amino acids, because our proteins are exclusively made up of L-amino acids only. There is no D-amino acid that is part of our proteins, all the mammalian proteins. But what about plants and microorganisms? Plants and microorganisms proteins, they contain many D-amino acids. So these proteins are made up of both D and L amino acids. So that is why whenever you take some plant proteins through diet, so these plant proteins, when they are digested in the GI tract, so from these plant proteins, D-amino acids are released. So obviously these D-amino acids will be taken up by the intestinal cells or gastric cells. So they'll be transported to different tissues of the body through blood, through circulatory system. Now these amino acids will be acted upon by D-amino acid oxidase enzyme. Okay, so these amino acids are acted upon by D-amino acid oxidase like this. So D-amino acids are converted to their respective keto acids, during which, as I told you, D-amino acid oxidase requires FAD as its coenzyme. So FAD is converted to FADH2, during which there is removal of amino group of D-amino acids as ammonia. So D-amino acids acted upon by D-amino acid oxidase, which is normally present in our cells. Though our D-amino acids are not part of the body, but D-amino acid oxidase enzyme is present. You see, this is very, very interesting. D-amino acids are not part of our body, but D-amino acid oxidase enzyme is present in our body, because this particular enzyme is required for the conversion of D-amino acids, which are normally generated in the turnover of plant proteins or microorganisms proteins. Okay, so now this D-amino acid oxidase acts on D-amino acids to liberate its amino group as ammonia, and there is formation of alpha keto acids. Now once these alpha keto acids are formed, they undergo transamination reactions by different transaminase enzymes to convert these alpha keto acids, which are generated from D-amino acids, into L-amino acids. Very interesting. You see, alpha keto acids that are generated from D-amino acids, now they are converted to L-amino acids by transaminases enzymes. Transaminases, which we have already discussed. So alpha keto acids are converted to L-amino acid. It means what? D-amino acids are converted to L-amino acids finally. So D-amino acids are acted upon by D-amino acid oxidase to convert D-amino acids into alpha keto acids. Now these alpha keto acids are converted to L-amino acids by transaminases enzymes. You see how D-amino acids, which are normally part of plant proteins and microorganisms proteins, are converted to L-amino acids in the body. There is a mechanism that exists in our body. So that is why D-amino acids are converted to L-amino acids. The alpha keto acids that are produced from D-amino acids, they can be diverted for the generation of energy, or they can also be diverted for the synthesis of glucose, which is a carbohydrate, or fatty acids, which is a lipid. Okay, so for the carbohydrate and fat biosynthesis, the keto acids that are generated from D-amino acids can also be utilized. This is all about oxidative deamination by amino acid oxidase. Remember that we are discussing about deamination. Within deamination, it can be oxidative deamination or non-oxidative deamination. So oxidative deamination can be carried out by glutamate dehydrogenase enzyme, or it can be carried out by amino acid oxidases. So there are two types of amino acid oxidases. One is L amino acid oxidase, the other one is D amino acid oxidase. Okay. So students, are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. So the next is non-oxidative deamination. So there is no oxidation reaction involved in non-oxidative deamination. So non-oxidative deamination, it is the deamination from some of the amino acids like serine, threonine, cysteine and histidine by different enzymes or different. For example, serine, remember the structure of serine threonine, both hydroxyl group containing amino acids. So they have hydroxyl group in their side chains. So serine, threonine, homoserine, they are acted upon by a specific enzyme called as dehydratase with respect to keto acids, and there is release of ammonia from their amino groups. So serine, threonine, homoserine, they undergo non-oxidative deamination to produce ammonia and their respective keto acids. The enzyme that is responsible for this type of non-oxidative deamination is called as dehydratase, whereas there is an enzyme called as desulfohydrase, which is responsible for non-oxidative deamination from cysteine amino acid. If you remember the structure of cysteine again, cysteine is hydroxyl group or sulfur containing amino acid. So it contains SH in its side chain, SH which is a sulfohydryl group. So this sulfohydryl group containing amino acids are acted upon by desulfohydrase, which converts cysteine into pyruvate, and there is release of ammonia and H2S, hydrogen sulfide. Okay, so H2S and released during this reaction, okay, which is a non-oxidative deamination. So importantly, remember that there is formation of ammonia, there is release of or liberation of ammonia from the amino group of these amino acids. And from the histidine, histidine is acted upon by a specific enzyme called as histidase, which removes amino group of histidine as ammonia, which results into the formation of urocanate. So urocanate is the product upon non-oxidative deamination enzyme from the histidine. Okay, histidine is converted to urocanate, during which there is formation of ammonia. Okay, so these are some of the non-oxidative deamination reactions. So students, are you following me again?
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, please. So next, this is very important. Please, try to get something out of this particular important slide, so that whenever you read from the textbook, you can easily understand. So ammonia after transamination and deamination reactions in the normal amino acid metabolism reactions. As I told you, ammonia exists as NH3 exists as ammonium ions, NH4 plus ions at the physiological pH in the body. Okay, so ammonia not only generated from or during transamination deamination reactions, ammonia is also generated from different biogenic amines. Biogenic amines means some of the important biological compounds that have amino group or amine group in its structure. Ammonia is also liberated or released from the amino group of purines and pyrimidines, or it is also generated during the action of intestinal bacteria, which contain a specific enzyme called as urease. And this urease of intestinal bacteria, when it acts on urea, it also leads to the formation of ammonia. So ammonia is liberated or removed or produced not only during deamination reactions, They are also it is also produced from different biogenic amines produced from the amino group of purines and pyrimidines. It is also generated by the action of bacterial urease enzyme, uh, which acts on urea. Okay, is constantly generated in the body. Very low concentration of ammonia is always or blood plasma, which is approximately 15 to 45 microgram per deciliter. Deciliter means 100 ml of blood. 100 ml of blood, there is approximately 15 to 45 microgram of ammonia is present. So, as compared to the biosynthesis of ammonia in the body, okay, because we have an efficient mechanism for ammonia transport and its immediate utilization for urea synthesis. There is an efficient mechanism for ammonia transport from different tissues to the liver and its for urea synthesis. Definitely the circulatory ammonia is, it is always very low, which is in the range of 15 to 45 microgram per deciliter. Okay. So importantly, the urea biosynthesis from ammonia takes place in liver. So the organ in which urea biosynthesis takes place is always liver. So that is why the ammonia that is generated from different tissues of the body should be transported to liver. Okay. So that is the transport of ammonia from various tissues should takes place because urea synthesis always takes place in liver. So ammonia as such will not be transported from these different tissues where ammonia is generated to liver. Okay. So ammonia as such is not transported, but it is transported in the form of another amino acid which is known as glutamine. So glutamine is an amino acid which is produced from different tissues of the body from the ammonia. So ammonia is always constantly produced in different tissues of the body. Whenever ammonia is just synthesized, it should be transported to the liver for the biosynthesis of urea. But ammonia will not be released as such into the circulation, so that from the circulation it will be transported or it will reach liver. Okay, that is why ammonia first it will be transferred or it will be converted to glutamine and it will be released into the circulation, and this glutamine reaches to liver easily. Okay, and even from muscle also ammonia is not transported as ammonia. Ammonia will be converted to alanine amino acid, and that alanine will be released into the circulation, and that alanine will be taken up by the liver. So just remember that ammonia that is generated or that is liberated or produced during different reactions of the cells will not be transported as such to the liver for the synthesis of urea. Ammonia first it is converted either to the glutamine in most of the tissues or to alanine in muscle, so that these amino acids are released into the circulation and they will be taken up by the liver for the conversion into urea. Okay, so that is why glutamate acts as the storage and transport form of ammonia. This is very, very, very important statement. Remember it. So glutamine serves as a storage and transport form of ammonia. Okay. So why ammonia should be converted to glutamine? Because glutamate is a freely diffusible molecule. There is no restriction of its movement. It can easily diffuse from one tissue to the other, and it can be easily transported across the tissues, like from different tissues to the liver. It can be easily transported. That is why during evolution ammonia is converted first. It is converted to glutamine. Now then it will be easily diffused from the tissues to the circulatory system, then from there to the liver. Okay. So in the liver, once glutamine reaches to, first we need to discuss how glutamine is synthesized in different tissues and how it is transported. After transport in the liver, how glutamine is ammonia. Okay, that we need to know. So the enzyme that is responsible for the synthesis of glutamine amino acid from ammonia is called as glutamine synthetase. So in various tissues, glutamine synthetase or it converts or it acts on ammonia to convert ammonia to glutamine. So what are the substrates for this enzymatic action? So glutamine synthetase converts or condenses ammonia and glutamate of ATP molecule to convert them into glutamine. You see, ammonia and glutamate they react with each other to form glutamine amino acid. Okay, so once glutamine is synthesized in the various tissues, now this glutamate can be easily diffused from different tissues to the circulation, and it reaches the liver, and again it passes through the liver membrane easily, or liver cells easily. So once they reach the cytosol of the different liver cells like hepatocytes, it will be reconverted to glutamate. So now glutamine is acted upon by glutaminase enzyme to convert ammonia or to convert glutamine to glutamate and ammonia. Finally, ammonia is liberated from glutamine amino acid in the target tissue. What is the target tissue? That is liver. So glutamine can be deaminated by hydrolysis of glutamine to release ammonia by the action of glutaminase enzyme. Okay. So it is a sequence of reactions. Just remember this sequence. There is transamination, deamination, or removal of ammonia, then ammonia is converted to glutamine. Glutamine is released into the circulatory system. Then it reaches liver. In the liver cells, it will be reconverted to ammonia and glutamate. So ammonia is it is formed, it is reformed, or it reaches to the liver cells. Now this ammonia will participate in urea biosynthesis. Remember this. So students, are you following me? Is there any doubt? Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now ammonia reached to the liver for the biosynthesis of urea. Now we will discuss urea cycle or urea biosynthesis. This is very, very important for your examination point of view. Please remember each and everything of urea cycle. This is very important. Okay. So urea, do you remember the formula of urea? Do you remember the formula of urea? Just look at one second. So yeah, look at this molecule. This is urea formula NH2CONH2. So I hope you remember the chemical structure of urea. Urea contains 2 amino groups, 1 keto group. Okay, 2 amino groups NH2, 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 CO, NH2. That is the chemical formula of urea. Remember. Okay. So urea is the end product of protein metabolism. I have already discussed. It can be end product of protein metabolism or amino acids. As proteins are converted to amino acids undergo deamination to liberate amino group as ammonia, and that ammonia is converted to urea finally. That is why urea is the end product of protein metabolism. Remember, okay? So urea, the nitrogen of amino acids, first they are converted to ammonia. Ammonia as such is very toxic to the body. That is why our body converts ammonia to urea so that it is so ammonia is detoxified and urea can be easily excreted out. Okay, whatever the ammonia that is produced, it is very toxic. The higher levels of ammonia is always toxic to the body. I shall discuss about it in the coming slides, but remember that higher levels of ammonia that is generated during deamination reactions and other deamination reactions from different compounds is always toxic to the body. That is why it should be detoxified. So how body detoxifies ammonia? It detoxifies the ammonia by converting ammonia to urea. Okay, once ammonia is converted to urea, now urea can be easily excreted out. Okay, urea, the site of synthesis of urea, remember that it is liver. So after the synthesis of urea in the liver, it is transported to kidneys. From there it will be excreted out through urine. Okay, remember. So what is the speciality of urea cycle? Remember, okay, this is very important. So this is the first metabolic pathway that was elucidated or discovered or studied in detail by the scientists. Okay. So far we have discussed many many pathways or many metabolic pathways, like many catabolic reactions, many anabolic reactions. But the first metabolic pathway that was completely studied and elucidated is urea cycle, way back in the year 1932. Just imagine, it is almost 90 years before urea cycle was studied for the first time. So it was the first metabolic pathway which was studied by two scientists, two scientists, namely Hans Krebs and Kurt Hanslitz, in the year 1932. And in the honor of these two scientists, urea cycle was also named as Krebs-Hanslitz cycle. Okay, urea cycle is also known as Krebs-Hanslitz cycle. Remember this. Okay. So the biosynthesis of urea, it is very simple. It is a cyclic, pathway, and there are only 5 chemical reactions which are part of this urea cycle. 5 reactions mediated by 5 enzymes. Okay, 5 different enzymes. So urea synthesis, it is a 5-step cyclic process, and which is mediated by 5 distinct enzymes. So what is the other speciality of urea cycle? Just look at this urea cycle. This is very simple. So within the cell, unlike the metabolic pathways which we have discussed so far, urea cycle takes place both in the mitochondria as well as cytosol. Okay. So what you have studied, like for example, glycolysis. Glycolysis always takes place in cytosol, whereas TCA cycle always takes place in mitochondrial matrix. Fatty acid degradation takes place in in the mitochondrial matrix, whereas fatty acid biosynthesis always takes place in the cytosol of the cell, whereas urea cycle takes place both in the mitochondria as well as cytosol. The first 2 reactions, you see 1 and 2, first 2 biochemical reactions of urea cycle takes place in the mitochondrial matrix, whereas remaining 3 reactions, 3, 4 and 5 chemical reactions of urea cycle takes place in cytosol. Okay, remember this is very important. Okay, so students, are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
please follow it. This is very important and very easy also. So what are the substrates for urea cycle? The substrates for urea cycle, so far we have discussed that ammonia is converted to urea. Ammonia is converted to urea. Many times I told you. Okay. So definitely one of the substrate for urea biosynthesis, or the first substrate for urea biosynthesis, is ammonia, NH4 plus. So ammonia that is generated in the cytosol, it is easily transported or it is easily diffused into mitochondrial matrix, And carbon dioxide, again, that is generated either in the cytosol, it is present in the mitochondria. Again, it can easily diffuse through the mitochondrial membranes to reach mitochondria. Okay, so when these two molecules are present in the mitochondria, they condense to form a product called as carbamoyl phosphate. So carbamoyl phosphate is produced from carbon dioxide and ammonia, which are the two substrates for the first reaction of urea cycle. And this particular reaction is mediated by an important enzyme known as carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1. Okay, carbamoyl phosphate is the product. That is why this name, the enzyme is named after the substrate. Carbamoyl phosphate synthesis is taking place. That is why the name of the enzyme is carbamoyl phosphate synthase. It is one because there is another form of carbamoyl phosphate synthase which is called as carbamoyl phosphate synthase 2. So carbamoyl phosphate synthase 2 participates in the nucleotide biosynthesis, whereas carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1 participate in urea cycle. Remember it. Okay. Carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1 or CPS1 is the enzyme that is responsible for the first step of urea cycle. So what is the first step of urea cycle? Carbon dioxide and ammonia react with each other to form carbamoyl phosphate, and during this reaction, two molecules of ATP are utilized and will be converted to two ADP plus PA molecules. Okay, here it is written that Mg means magnesium ions. So for the activity of carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1, magnesium ions are also required. That is why it is shown as 2 Mg ATP, or you can write that 2 ATP to 2 ADP plus PA and 2 Mg separately. Okay. So magnesium ions and ATP are required for the action of carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1, which converts carbon dioxide and ammonia to carbamoyl phosphate synthase. Okay. So another coenzyme that is required for carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1 is N-acetyl glutamate. So N-acetyl glutamate is also required for CPS1 action. So the first product that is formed in the urea cycle is carbamoyl phosphate molecule. Okay. This carbamoyl phosphate now condenses with L-ornithine molecule in the mitochondria itself to produce L-citrulline molecule. Okay, to produce L-citrulline molecule in the mitochondria only. Once L-citrulline is formed in the mitochondria, by the enzyme that is responsible for this reaction is ornithine transcarbamylase. Ornithine transcarbamylase. Very simple. Here, the transfer of ornithine molecule onto carbamoyl phosphate is taking place. Okay, transfer of ornithine onto carbamoyl phosphate is taking place. That is why the name of the enzyme is given as ornithine transcarbamylase. So ornithine transcarbamylase condenses carbamoyl phosphate and L-ornithine to produce L-citrulline in. But once L-citrulline is synthesized, it can easily be translocated into cytosol. So L-citrulline that is formed, it should be translocated into cytosol for the participation in the rest of the urea cycle reactions. Okay. So once L-citrulline is translocated into cytosol, it will be acted upon by arginosuccinic acid synthase, which condenses L-citrulline with L-aspartate amino acid. Okay, to produce a molecule called as argininosuccinate. So students, one thing you remember, although the name of the enzymes and name of the substrates are important, no need to remember the structures of the products that are formed. Okay, the urea cycle, you try to remember the name of the substrates and products and name of the enzymes. That's it. Okay, no need to remember the structures. Okay, no need to remember the structures. Okay, Just remember the substrates and products and name of the enzymes and where they are taking place, whether it is a mitochondria or cytosol. Okay, so that is why, you know, don't get scared by looking at the structure. These are very simple. L-citrulline condenses with an amino acid called as L-aspartate to produce argininosuccinate. Okay, so here again ATP is utilized, which is converted to AMP and PPA. Okay, and magnesium is also required for its enzymatic action. So argininosuccinate synthesis is responsible for the condensation of L-citrulline and L-aspartate to form argininosuccinate molecule. Okay, so students, are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So one thing I want you to, you know, focus here is, you just say the urea structure of urea is NH2 CO NH2. Okay, the location of or how these amino groups are produced or added to urea molecule is, just see, one of the amino group of urea is coming from ammonia. Okay, one of the amino group of urea is coming from ammonia, definitely, because ammonia is converted to urea. That is what I am saying again and again. So one of the amino group is coming from ammonia. What about the other amino group? Other amino group is coming from the aspartate amino acid during the conversion of L-citrulline and L-aspartate to argininosuccinate. That is why these amino groups are highlighted here. You just see. Ammonia is converted to first carbamoyl phosphate. Its amino group is located here. So carbamoyl phosphate is converted to L-citrulline. Again, amino group is highlighted here. Now L-citrulline is condensed with L-aspartate. Now L-aspartate is having an amino group. Both are converted to arginine. You just see the location of two amino groups of the argininosuccinate molecule. Okay. So these will be the part of urea molecule in the next few reactions. Okay. And CO group of urea is coming from CO2. You just see the CO keto group of urea is coming from CO2. CO2, CO, CO, you know, CO again here. Okay, and this will become a keto group in the next reactions. So remember this. So argininosuccinate is acted upon by an enzyme called as argininosuccinase, which is the fourth reaction of urea cycle to release fumarate, okay, fumarate and L-arginine. Okay, so argininosuccinate is converted to L-arginine. If you remember the L-arginine, there are three amino group in its structure. If you remember the structure, it is well and good, but you remember that L-arginine contains three amino groups. Okay, how it is produced? Argininosuccinate is acted upon by argininosuccinase to, this enzyme breaks here. You just see it is breaking here. It is breaking here to produce this part of the argininosuccinate as arginine, and remaining part of the molecule is, it is released as fumarate. Now L-arginine is acted upon by arginase enzyme by hydrolytic cleavage with the help of water molecule. By hydrolytic cleavage, it, where it is breaking, you see arginase is acting here, or it is breaking the bonds here to release this particular group as urea. Okay, urea is released from arginine. So arginine is acted upon by arginase to produce this part of the molecule is urea. Okay, so urea is formed. What else is formed? L-ornithine is formed. So when L-arginine is acted upon by arginase enzyme, urea is synthesized and L-ornithine molecule is synthesized. So the end product of protein metabolism is urea. Again and again I'm telling you, the end product of protein metabolism or amino acid metabolism, urea. Urea is synthesized here, you see. Where does urea is synthesized? It is in the cytosol, not in the mitochondria. Because only the first two reactions of urea cycle are taking place in the mitochondrial matrix, whereas the remaining reactions, third, fourth, and fifth reactions are taking place in the cytosol. So L-arginine is acted upon by arginase to produce urea and to produce L-ornithine. L-ornithine that is just produced in the cytosol, it will be translocated again into the mitochondrial matrix so that it can participate in the another urea cycle. So L-ornithine, it resembles the TCA cycle. It resembles the oxaloacetate of TCA cycle. You see, every time oxaloacetate is generated in the TCA cycle, so that oxaloacetate can condense with acetyl CoA to produce citrate molecule. That is the first reaction of TCA cycle. Similarly to the oxaloacetate, here L-ornithine is recycled. It is always produced in the cytosol, translocated in the mitochondria so that it can participate in the second reaction of urea cycle. Once citrulline is formed, it will be translocated in the urea cycle and it participate in the other reactions of urea cycle. This is very important. Urea cycle is the first metabolic pathway that was elucidated by Krebs and Hansen. Cycle, ammonia is converted to. It is a 5-step cyclic process with 5 distinct enzymes. First 2 reactions of urea cycles are taking place in the mitochondria, whereas remaining reactions, 3rd, 4th, and 5th reactions are taking place in the cytosol. Understood something out of these 2 slides. This is very important. Okay. So what is the overall, what are overall chemical reactions of urea cycle? So urea cycle is an irreversible cycle. There is not even a single reaction of urea cycle is reversible. It is always irreversible. It is an irreversible cyclic pathway, and it requires 4 ATP because you just see here 2 ATPs are utilized in the, whereas in the 3rd reaction ATP is converted to not to ADP, it is converted to AMP and PPI. So ATP the energy that is equivalent to 2 ATPs are utilized here. That is why it is shown as 4 ATP molecules are required for the production of urea in the urea cycle. So the overall reaction of urea cycle is 1 molecule of ammonia, 1 molecule of carbon dioxide, and 1 molecule of aspartate. 3 molecules of ATP, although it is equivalent to 4 ATP, but here it is shown as 3. 3 ATP gives rise to urea, and fumarate is released in between. So fumarate, 2 ADP plus 2 PI. Out of these ATPs, 2 ATPs are converted to 2 ADP and PA, whereas 1 ATP is converted to AMP and PPA. So AMP formation means the energy equivalent to 2. Always you remember, if an ATP is converted to ADP and PA, it means that 1 molecule of ATP is utilized. If an ATP is converted to A, it means 2 molecules of to 2 molecules to the chemical reaction. So the reaction of urea cycle. So urea that is produced in the liver, it is a freely diffusible molecule. It will be easily diffused, be released into the circulation, and through blood it is excreted in urine. Okay. So ammonia that is produced, which is highly toxic compound, it is converted to urea, and ammonia is detoxified into urea, which is excreted through urine, right? And small amount of urea also enters the intestine, where it is acted upon by bacterial urease enzyme to convert urea into carbon dioxide and ammonia. Just see the reverse of this urea. If urea is acted upon by urease, what are the end products? Ammonia and carbon dioxide. So bacterial urease enzyme acts on urea, part of the urea, small amounts of the urea always enters intestine in the body So in the intestine, this urea is acted upon by bacterial urease enzyme to produce ammonia and carbon dioxide. And this ammonia, either it is lost in the feces or it is absorbed in the blood. So what happens in the renal failure? Definitely the blood urea level is always elevated. So whenever there is renal failure, urea that is produced, it cannot be excreted through urine. More urea is that is generated in the blood. So definitely blood urea is okay, which is called as uremia. This condition is called as uremia. Hyper, which result in intestine and more breakdown of urea in the intestine to form urea, to form ammonia. So what happens whenever there is more and more urea that is not excreted, but it is built in the, or it is built up in, or the condition is known as uremia. Whenever uremia is developed, more and more ammonia is formed from these urea molecules. Whenever there is, ammonia, this ammonia is easily, it is easily transported to blood again, which hyperammonemia condition, which ultimately leads to kidney failure in the patients. So hyperammonia, it results into these conditions, like sometimes it may lead to coma, it may lead to seizures, it may lead to the failure of your CNS, central nervous system, or sometimes it also leads to the kidney failure also. Okay, so it is normally seen in kidney failure because kidney failure leads to the hyperammonia condition. So hyperammonia is very toxic because hyperammonia condition, it finally leads to coma. Okay, because it acts on CNS system, central nervous system. Finally, it leads to coma. So students, are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, finally,
Yes,
this
sir.
is all about urea cycle. So the last slide of today's class, or today's or the entire protein metabolism, it is decarboxylation of amino acids. So we have discussed about transamination, we have discussed about deamination by different enzymes like deamino acid oxidases, L-amino acid oxidases, or glutamate dehydrogenases, and how does ammonia is synthesized, and how ammonia is converted to urea in urea cycle in the liver, and how urea is transported to kidneys and it is excreted. So we have discussed those things already. So finally, only this particular slide is left, that is decarboxylation of ammonia. So deamination of the amino acids leads to the formation of ammonia and alpha keto acids. Whenever there is decarboxylation means removal of carboxyl group of the amino acids. Amino acids, as you know, they contain both amino group and carboxyl group. If amino group is removed as ammonia is converted to urea. But if carboxyl group of the amino acids are removed by some of the enzymes called as decarboxylases, as the name suggests, decarboxylases, carboxyl group is removed as carbon dioxide. Okay, so amino acids are decarboxylated. You see NH2 group and COH group. This carboxyl group is removed as carbon dioxide to produce their respective amine containing molecules, amine containing molecules, okay, or simply amines. So amino acids are converted to amines by the action of decarboxylase. It results into the formation of carbon dioxide, and the coenzyme that is required for the decarboxylase function is PLP. PLP is pyridoxal phosphate. So pyridoxal phosphate is required for the synthesis of for the action of decarboxylase enzyme. Carbon dioxide is released from the carboxyl group of the amino acids in the decarboxylation reaction. Decarboxylation, removal of carboxyl group as carbon dioxide. Okay. So this table showing the amino acids, the resultant amine groups or the resultant amines of the decarboxylation reactions, and some of the functions of these important amines in the body. Okay. For example, serine amino acid decarboxylation, it forms ethanol amine. Okay. Serine, upon decarboxylation, it forms ethanol amine. And if you remember ethanol amine, it is required for the formation of choline. So choline, again, if you remember the choline structure, choline is normally required for the synthesis of phospholipids, like phosphatidylcholine. So phosphatidylcholine requires choline molecule, and in turn this choline molecule is formed from serine amino acid. Okay, upon decarboxylation. Okay, when glutamate is decarboxylated, it forms an important molecule called as gamma aminobutyric acid. Aminobutyric acid, in short, it is called as GABA. Remember, so glutamate is the precursor molecule for the synthesis of GABA or gamma aminobutyric acid. GABA means G for gamma, A amino, B for butyric, A for acid. Okay, GABA. So GABA is synthesized from glutamate. So it is a very popular molecule because it acts as the inhibitory neurotransmitter in the nervous system. Okay. Amine that is produced from an amino acid upon decarboxylation is histamine. So histamine is produced from histidine amino acid upon decarboxylation. Histamine is a very popular molecule because it acts as vasodilator, required for the release of gastric HCl secretion and even pepsin enzyme production. Okay, pepsin enzyme production in the stomach. So histamine is required because it performs various functions, but histamine, remember that it is a decarboxylated product of histidine amino acid. Dopamine is formed from phenylalanine, and dopamine is in turn a precursor molecule for the synthesis of two important hormones, norepinephrine and epinephrine. The hormones like norepinephrine and epinephrine are synthesized from an amino acid called as phenylalanine, because first phenylalanine decarboxylated into dopamine, and this dopamine is required for the. Another important vasoconstrictor molecule, that is tyramine, is synthesized from tyrosine. Tryptamine, another important hormone like serotonin and melatonin. You might have listened about these two important hormones during physiology and other classes. Serotonin, these are again two important hormones that are continuously secreted by the body, and these two important hormones and even tryptamine, they are synthesized from an amino acid called as tryptophan by decarboxylation reactions only. And these hormones again, they are required for elevation of blood pressure, and they are required for the cerebral activity, and importantly melatonin is required for circadian the function of these enzymes, but important function of these hormones. But these hormones are in turn produced from different amino acids. Okay, that you remember. Again, taurine amine is produced from, and taurine is a constituent of bile acids. Bile salts, if you remember, they are required for the lipid digestion or the breakdown of triacylglycerols in the intestine. If you remember it, it is well and good. But if you don't remember that, you just go through the textbook. These are very important. Okay. So carboxylation of amino acids leads to the formation of different amino acids, which are very, very important amines that act as either as neurotransmitters, or some amines act as hormones, some amines act as or help in the formation of bile acids and bile salts, so that there is digestion of triacylglycerols easily taken place in the gastrointestinal tract or in the intestinal lumen. Okay, so this is all about protein. Okay, so I suggest you to go to use Satyendra textbook. It is very neat. You can easily study it. If you understand my lecture, you can easily go through it. You can easily understand the rest of the part. So students, I hope you followed me well and you got something from today's class. So you can ask me if you have any doubt. Please tell me. Do you have any doubt in today's class? For today, if there is no doubt, to the textbook.
Thank you, sir.